Life speaks. It speaks through struggles and success, through music and messages, the preconceived and the unexpected. Whether you are in the depths of the valley or in the midst of your mountaintop experience, everyone needs to be encouraged from time to time. You've tuned in to ALH Broadcasting, and this is Andrea L. Hines, your host for When Life Speaks. I'm glad you accepted the invitation to connect with us as we share stories of strength, testimonies of triumph, observations, and information meant to touch the heart and uplift the soul. There's something in this broadcast just for you, and if it's a blessing to your life, it just may be for someone else as well. So tag, share, invite someone, then turn down the volume of life and get ready to receive, so that when life speaks, you'll speak life. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to When Life Speaks. You are here with me, Andrea L. Hines, your host, and I've got some guests coming up tonight, and we're going to have a very candid conversation. In the meantime, let me just tell you that I'm glad that you are here. I hope you have had an absolutely amazing day today. I know that God is always with us, but I also know that there's a lot going on. Oh my goodness, there's a lot going on. We're going to tap into something that all of us will experience at some point in time. And just this is one of those evenings that we're just going to talk about it. We're just going to talk about it. We hope that if you have joined us, or when you join us, you will join the conversation as well. Don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed. It's okay. You can talk to us. We'd love it when you do. And I'm going to go ahead and get started tonight. Let's see. Good evening, Nikayetta. Nikayetta's up there in New York. Thank you. Glad to have you on the line with us tonight. Listen, I am just excited. I'm excited about the two ladies that we have on tonight because they both have stories of strength. They both have testimonies of triumph. And it is really, really my honor to be able to get them together tonight and have them on the broadcast. I'm going to bring my first guest in for the evening. You know her. She's often my co-host. She often is with me when we do Senior Sidebar. Her name is Francina Booker. And there she is. Good evening, Francina. How are you?
I'm good. And good evening to everybody else. I'm wonderful. Thank you.
Good. You're looking good today, too.
I'm feeling good. And just glad to be a part of and the co-host on this show with you. Excited.
Well, I'm glad to have you this evening, and we're going to tell everybody right off the bat. Francina is a cancer survivor. She is coming up on an anniversary. Which one is it, Francina?
7 years.
7 years
cancer free.
Hallelujah, and thank you, Jesus. We are so happy that is happening for you, Francina. And Francina has become quite an advocate for cancer research and all things that have to do with cancer awareness, breast cancer awareness specifically. And we're just proud of you, Francine, and we're just glad that you're here tonight to talk about this subject. My second guest who's coming in this evening is an author. She's a consultant. She is a professional speaker, a podcaster, sexual assault thriver. She's an advocate and an activist. And she also has a master's in marriage and family therapy with a specialization in addiction and addictive behavior. So I'm going to bring her in right now. And there she is, Miss Leah Forney. Leah, good afternoon. Good evening to you.
Hey, y'all. Good evening. So glad to be with y'all.
glad to have you here as well. Hey, Bernice, good evening to you. Thank you for being in the house tonight. Look, this is one topic that we can't avoid. It's something that is inevitable. It's something that all of us will face at some point in time. Those of you who are already on the line, if you want to share this broadcast with someone, this would be the time to do it. I have gotten word just before we went on the air about someone who had lost a loved one. You all know that I lost a dear friend last week, and we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about how you can, and if you can, not just survive, but thrive while you are living with loss. Hey, good evening, Paula Obi. Dr. Paula, thank you for being in the house tonight. I want to start, though, with kind of a disclaimer because this is a sensitive subject. It's a very personal, private subject. It can be painful and it can put you in a very tender place. And I want you to know that all of us here have that are on the broadcast tonight, we've all experienced loss on some level. And there are four areas that I think about when I think about loss. And one is, of course, loss of a loved one through death. There's loss through divorce. That's a kind of loss. There's loss through relationships. And there can be a huge sense of loss when it comes to career. And these four areas, I think, put us in the same place of grieving as the death of a loved one. Because the loss is really, I looked it up and I said, let me see what loss is. Loss is when you're deprived or separated from someone or something you value or feel is significant. That's what loss is. That's what it's all about. Now, this I want to say before I tag into this. This is not meant to be a therapy session. It is not a symbol for grief counseling. It's not designed to tell you what you need to do or how you need to feel. You may agree or disagree with the things that you hear. This is simply a candid conversation with three women who have learned to thrive and not just survive while living with loss. Something we're all going to face, something we're all going to have to deal with. And we're just telling you how we navigated through those places. So I don't want anybody to be offended or feel like, oh, they're trying to tell me what to do. And I don't feel that way. And because I have seen some discussions that have gotten so heated when it comes to grief and grieving and how people feel and how long it takes and all of that. We're not here for that purpose. We're here to tell you what our journeys have been. And I know that, Francina, you have dealt with divorce. You've dealt with a loss. Your husband died. And one of the other things that we figured out that when there are things that can happen that create loss, even though that thing is not the loss in and of itself. Because I know, Francina, when you had figured out and found out or were diagnosed with breast cancer, that caused some loss and some shifting and some turning for you. So while the breast cancer is not considered a loss, it created a loss for you. Would that be right in saying?
Yes, yes. When I was diagnosed, it got to a point where I could no longer work.
Right.
So therefore, after exalting my savings, I went to apply to get help. Well, I was denied. So therefore, I had no income, um, and frightening, scary because I'm trying to figure how am I going to pay my bills.
Mm-hmm.
Whom you don't want to go to asking people borrowing. That wasn't something that I did. I had to pray on that, and I had to have asked God to help me because I'm gonna be honest with you. I got a little panicky. I
Yeah.
was afraid. You everything comes down on you. Everything comes crashing on you. Medications. How am I going to buy my medications? My food. my mortgage. I mean, it's everything. And I'm like, where's the resources coming from? But for me, I'm thankful I had an excellent social worker, um, who guided me, who gave me information. You know, I tell people I had a sister that passed away in 2015 from breast cancer. So therefore, my niece had resources that she shared with me to help me to navigate, through the journey. So it was tough, it was hard, and then I was able to apply for disability. But even with that, I had so many people tell me, when you apply for disability, you don't get it the first time. You may have to apply for it 2 or 3 times, and that's discouraging. But I vowed that I was going to be able to be approved the first time because I knew who I was. I knew who my father was, and I stood on his word. And yes, I was approved the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's hard and stressful because you want to heal. You got things that you want to do, but all that it can interfere if you allow it. So you got to have a positive mindset.
Gotta have a positive mind. Exactly. Leah, I know for you, you lost, and actually, Francina, this applies to you right now too, because you have had back to back losses. And I know, Leah, you have also experienced back to back losses. Um, how did you navigate through those when you were experiencing those things? Just share a little bit with us.
Yeah, that was such a hard time in my life. So, 2018 to 2019, I had about 5 people die on me in 1 year. It started with my ex fiance Joseph, who passed away. Then I had a dear friend of mine, Carmen, um, who got murdered. My dad died. Then Joseph's father died. So I had like literally within like 3 to 4 months from 2018 to 2019, just consecutive losses. It was very hard to navigate because I felt like I had to compartmentalize. Like I almost felt like I had to be like, all right, today I'm gonna grieve Joseph. Tomorrow I'm gonna grieve Carmen.
Right.
Like I didn't know how to grieve all of those losses at one time. So it really started with me having to compartmentalize and kind of pick and choose
Mm.
when to grieve, how to grieve, who to grieve for. But even in the midst of grieving, like I was angry. I was really angry with God. I found myself like shutting down and not really wanting to talk to him, not wanting to pray, not wanting to worship because I just couldn't understand like how did you allow this to happen? Why did you allow this to happen? Why did you take someone from me like Joseph who loved me unconditionally? Like
Mhm.
why? And I just didn't have the courage to ask those questions because I remember being raised in a church and people always telling you, you can't have don't have questions for God. Don't ever ask God
Yeah.
why, you know? And so that not being able to ask why turned into anger and it turned into me being like, well, I'm just not gonna talk. How about that? I'm gonna go to church. I'm gonna just be a body. I'm not gonna worship. I'm not gonna praise. I'm not gonna do any of those things, which is not like me, but I was so angry because I just couldn't understand why for 1 year straight I had to deal with so many losses. So that's literally how I had to like navigate that. I just had to compartmentalize.
Mhm. Now, for me, the losses were not quick and they weren't together. I didn't have people that I lost, just one right after the other. But there are times that I feel the loss in probably a different way. And it's not so much compartmentalizing, but I'll wake up sometimes and I'll realize that I no longer have um, family. I no longer have family. I have cousins, but my mother's gone, my father's gone, my sister's gone. I have one child, and she's still here, but there is still um, an emptiness. There's still a void, and it can be triggered by anything at any time. And I think the most devastating part of loss whether it is that or career. When you've been doing something your whole life, like Francina had been in art in her whole life. I mean, that was her career. That was her passion. That was her job. When those things happen, um, and particularly under circumstances that you don't create or expect, like walking in one day is different when I walk into a job and tell you I'm not coming back. Love you, see you, bye, I'm out. It's another thing when you walk in and they say to you, your services are no longer needed. And this is the job you're looking to retire from. This is the job that you have put your all in. And, suddenly you realize it's a job. It should not have been my family. It should not have been my all my friends and everything, tied up in this place. So you don't know what to do. But the stages of grief, I find, and you ladies let me know how you feel about it, but I don't care what the loss is or the level of loss. um, Anger is always going to be present. Anger is going to pop up. That depression will pop up. um, the the denial may or may not pop up. Shock will always be there. The day that I had gone to a conference, I had come back from the conference, I had had discussion with my boss as to how we were going to downsize and everything. Little did I know I was going to be the downsize. So I came back from a conference. I just bought a brand new car and was told, we're going to have to let you go. We know you'll be okay. So we're going to have to, we decided we would let you go. And I thought, you decided that the person that's praying for this company is the one that's no longer necessary. And I was hot. I didn't fly off the handle. I didn't cuss anybody out. I didn't do any of those things. But I vowed I would never go back. She said, when things get better, will you come back? And no, ma'am. Mm-mm. No, that's not going to happen. But that's not what God ended up doing. He ended up putting her in a situation. He told me one day to call and see how she was doing. And I didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway. And this is something about going through whatever it is you're going through in life. If you are obedient to what God says and you trust him enough, you can make it through and thrive, really come to thrive through anything, because he really does have a plan. When I went through all of this, I was facing foreclosure and our paths crossed again. And when they crossed again, God told me to go back and help her. And I said, okie dokie, I'll do it because you told me to. And I went back and did that. And she was the one that ended up getting me out of the financial situation I was in so that I could save my house. Now, if I had held on to that anger, that never would have happened. So sometimes we hold on to things out of protection. I won't love again because I lost the one person that I thought I would love forever. I just different things that we do that we think are in protect mode, but really, it's not that at all. God still has us. Why do you think it's so difficult for us to accept the fact that God has us when we're going through these things? Because sometimes, those who are looking in always want to tell you something biblical that they believe is going to just snap you right out of wherever they think you are. And it is just not that way. What's your all's feeling about that when you were going through the losses that you had? Yeah, Francina.
Um, a few things. I would say to someone trying to be respectful and holding back the anger, I would say, unless you walked in my shoes, unless you've gone through, dealt with what I'm going through, you don't have the right to tell me what I should or should not do or how I should or should not feel. No disrespect. But I also come to understand that sometimes people don't know what to say. So it's up to me to educate them on how to respond, because if said it to me, they may go to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But I also find with me guilt. I say guilt because my sister passed away from breast cancer. I'm still here.
Yeah.
All my siblings, my mother and my father are gone. I'm the only one left. God kept me because I have a sister on my father's side. I'm the oldest. She's the youngest. We have just within the last 3 years have connected. And our bond is tight. But I have someone, that I can communicate with to say that still this is a part of me. We are part of each other. But you wonder why me? What is it? I'm still here, and they are not. So you feel a little guilty. But I have to trust God. I have not fulfilled my purpose yet. There's still work that I need to do, and I understand that. But it's not easy. It's not easy, and there are times when I wake up and I'm talking to God. Sometimes I need a little reassurance. His word, has to speak to me and me have to cast those negative thoughts, out of my mind and said, you know what? God knew what he was doing. God don't make any mistakes. Trust the process.
Trust the process.
And so that's where I'm at with that. That's how I'm handling it.
Leah, before you share, Dr. Paula had put in, lost her brother at age 7, and she was 9 years of age. And then 15 months later, I lost my mom. I was numb for quite a while. And I think that's another thing that happens is along with the guilt that you were describing, Francine, you do just get numb, and you get to a place where, like you said, nobody can tell you how. Nobody can tell you the time frame. Nobody can do any of that. When I lost my dad, and my father and I were very close, I pretended. I had guilt for a while because I wanted him to have this surgery so that he could feel good and come spend time with me in North Carolina. We left the hospital. He was fine. The next day, he couldn't speak. He had had 2 strokes. And I carried the guilt of that for a long time. This is the first time I've actually really talked about it, because I felt if I hadn't encouraged him, maybe, just maybe, maybe he would still be here. But God didn't have that plan. But I kept busy. I had moved to North Carolina, and I felt like God was preparing me to miss him, because for a long time, and this is the denial, for a long time, my thought process was he's just living in DC and I'm just living in North Carolina. Had I been in DC, I'd have been at the hospital every single day. I know that I would have. But God created that separation so that I didn't feel it the same way. And it was probably 2 years, I think, before I actually cried. I was the one at the funeral that the cousins grabbed because they think you're going to jump in the grave. No, no, I wasn't doing that. But I was at the dentist and I had gotten some laughing gas because I don't like dentists in my mouth. And when I came out, for whatever reason, she was asking, you know how they give you the sheet and they ask you about your parents and all that. When she got to my father, I just was inconsolable. I just cried and cried and cried and cried. And she came out to the car and she said, Miss Hines, are you okay? And I'm like going, yeah, I'm fine, I'm fine. I don't know, was it, you know, it just came on me just like that, just like all of a sudden. So when you're making this statement, nobody can do your journey. And nobody can really understand your journey. And I have a theory, my own personal theory, about why some people can navigate better than others, or what we perceive to be better than others, because there is no right or wrong, good or bad. And it's about that individual and how God is going to deal with them, work with them, and what they need. Share with us, Leah, what do you think about all of this?
You know what's so interesting about my grief journey? I always say that Joseph was the catalyst for me to finally heal from all the losses in my life. So when he passed away, I found myself going to therapy. And it was in therapy that my therapist at the time said, "You've been grieving your whole life." Because anybody that knows my backstory knows I'm the daughter of two addicts. I grew up without my parents. So I was dealing with loss as a child, dealing with my parents being in and out of prison, in and out of my life. But I never saw it as loss. Like I did, they were saying, I was numb to it. It was just like, okay, I'm just going to go about my life and whatever happens, happens. But it took Joseph's death for God to be like, look at all these other losses in your life that you have never dealt with, that you've never grieved, that you never talked about. And I had to start kind of peeling back the layers on that. And I think one of the reasons why I haven't always been a fan of the stages of grief is because to me, it tells people that there's like this one linear way to healing. And we know that healing, there is no linear direction. Like
Right.
you can be, depressed stage today, angry tomorrow, acceptance the next day. Like it's the ebbs and flows that comes with the healing and this journey. And so, but it started with me being in love, meet the guy that I thought I was going to marry. He dies on me. And God used that as the catalyst to unlock all the other losses in my life that I had never just taken the moment to like process. And I think that was because nobody gave me the tools, one. And two, I didn't have safe spaces to be able to say, this is what I was dealing with. I lost a child. Most people don't know I lost a child early in my 20s. I didn't start processing that until about 6, 7, 8 years ago, because
Right.
I grew up in environments where you were just supposed to keep it moving. You were just supposed to keep going. You can't cry about it, keep going. And so it was that rhetoric that stuck with me and kept me in a place that was numb for so long until I had this like outburst or like, the brink bursted and I had no choice but to finally sit and process all these other losses in my life that I just never dealt with.
Ed, tell me what was it that, because we know, I know that Francina does, I do, I don't know whether you do or not, Liv, but we know, and I'm sure people on the line know, individuals who stay in grief for years. I mean, and they don't grief grieving has become a comfortable space for them. I think that they're more comfortable in being angry. They're more comfortable in the guilt, And this is not an indictment against them or anything. I'm not trying to do that. But there, something has to happen that switches, like a light bulb goes on or a light switch goes on, or something happens that says, I want to get out of this space. I don't like the way I'm feeling. I don't want to feel bad all the time or sad all the time or mad all the time or any of those things. Do you remember that being a process for you, Leah, and what it was that triggered for you? And then, Francine, I want you to answer the same question.
Oh, 1,000%. I almost died. I literally, what the moment that pushed me into going to therapy was me driving. I had just moved here to Maryland. I was feeling lonely. It was really shortly after Joseph had passed away. And I found myself just driving, grieving, crying. And I know never get behind the wheel of a car when you have those high emotions. And it was in me driving, not paying attention. I blacked out. And literally, what brought me back to reality was the sound of the other car's horn. And we were inches from a head on collision.
Ooh.
And it
Uh,
was in that moment that God said, are you going to deal with it? Because it's dealing with you.
wow.
And so it was that moment that I was just like, well, I don't know how to deal with it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this thing that you're asking me to do it, it feels heavy. It's too much. I don't know how to deal with it. And I still have a job, and I still have to show up and be a therapist for other people. And I got all these things, and you want me to deal with it. And it was in that moment that I just finally was like, well, if you help me, I'll
Mm,
go down this path. Because at that time, like, I didn't know what to deal with it. It was too many losses. Like, I was dealing with the loss of loved ones who passed. Then I moved to a whole new city and state where I didn't know anybody, so that was a loss. My family and I were not on the greatest terms. That was a lot. It was just too many losses. And it was in that moment of a almost head-on collision where God was like, hey, you gonna deal with it? Because it's dealing with you, because you almost lost your life tonight. And that was that wake up call that was like, okay, you need to deal with this. And so within days I made an appointment for therapy, and I started going to therapy and really beginning the process of healing. But that was the moment.
that was a moment. That was a moment. Francina, did you have a moment when things turned for you, and you made a
Yes,
decision? Yeah.
therapy. I was always in denial that I didn't need it, that I was okay, that I was handling things correctly, and God
How did,
told me,
how did you know that you weren't?
huh?
How did
God
you?
told me. He
Okay.
told me. He told me I needed to go to therapy because I was like, I don't need what I need to go to therapy for. You hear people talk about it, but I said, I don't. That's not me. I don't need that. And when he said that, and I went to see one, and she started peeling back layers. I mean, go took me back to my childhood, things that I did not know that I did not deal with. I didn't know that, but there were tears. I mean, I was crying. I mean, because I was finally understanding and realizing that I've been holding on to this hurt, this pain that I could not understand why it was there, why it was happening. And like I said, as she started to help me peel back them layers and singing things, and I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive myself to be able to let go. And once I did that, how I knew that I had, I was overcoming, I got peace. It was like I felt a weight that was lifted, and I was like in awe, and I was like, wow, what's this, and so I started having a communication with God, and so I was asking him questions, and there were scriptures that I had to go to, scriptures that I read, and I really knew when I had really overcome. I was in New York, I mean in Maryland for Christmas, and I had come home, and my friend had gathered up all my mail for me. So I was going through my mail, and honey, these bills, I mean, everything negative was just coming at me, and I could feel the anger, it rising up in me. And I said, the devil is a liar. I have a little sanctuary where I sit at now in my room. I came in here and I just started praising God and just calling on Jesus and just worshiping. And I kept on and kept on and kept on and kept on. I would not stop. until I felt that peace, that calmness. I was able to go back and go through them bills, and it was like I was good. So I was like, oh, okay, see, you could have had this long time ago, but here, you didn't think, that you needed it,
Mm-hmm.
but you did. And like I said, there were losses that I had not dealt with. Auntie, I hear you talking about your father. Well, with my brother was in the military for 12 years, and he was in the Navy, so he was on a ship for 12 years. And he was the baby, I was the oldest, and him and I were really close. And he had called me and let me know that he was coming home. He was in the barracks. He said, but I don't want to stay there. Can I come live with you? And I of course, and that was in 1990, June, I'll never forget, June 1990, he come to live with me. April 21st, 20, 1991, excuse me, y'all. I get a phone call at work that my apartment is on fire.
Oh, wow.
So therefore, and I had just talked to my brother, mind you, 2 hours ago, and his last words to me were, "I love you. I'm gonna watch all my children, and I'm gonna go to bed. I don't have to go to work tonight, so you don't have to wake me up." I get home, and I mean, you see the smoke in the sky, in the street, and I jumped out of my car with it still running to the building, and everybody's outside. I don't see him, and I'm running back and forth, and I'm telling the firemen that my brother's in there. They say ain't nobody in there. I said my brother's in there. Go back in there, and so I'm running back and forth with a window where he normally be at, and what seemed like eternity, I seen an arm go up in the window. So I knew that was him, and I fell to my knees. Well, they were bringing him down the window on the ladder, and they were doing CPR. And you could see smoke coming out of his mouth. He wasn't burnt. He still had on his army fatigues, white shirt, and his green socks. His toes was curled. His ears were singed. And I asked, could I ride with him? And they said no. So once we got to the hospital, I had to identify his body. But what got me was, how am I going to tell my mother? He come live with me. What is my mother going to say? It's my fault, because had I not let him live with me, he would still be alive. I carried that for 5 years. Wow. I went to my mother, got on my knees, and begged for her forgiveness. My mother said, you better get up. It is not your fault. This is not your fault. But I couldn't hear that. But during my therapy, that came up, and so I was able to, I deal with it, now I'm in a better place, and so my thing was, I had to stop blaming me, because I said I felt it was my fault, and so I wound up, like I said, after dealing with it and everything, I'm okay with it, but I think about him, wishing he was here, he was 29 years old. He didn't have any children, and so it was a lot. It was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But therapy, I recommend it. It's nothing to be ashamed of, it can bring you out them dark places and help you live life and enjoy your life without regrets.
And that's it, without regret. Shani, thank you for joining us. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing your name correctly or not, but thank you for joining us tonight. And if there is anybody on the line who has a specific question about navigating how to live with loss, or wants to share something about what turned for them so that they could begin to live and thrive. Leah, I know you did a lot of writing, because you got book after book after book. The books just kept started rolling. I said, "Look at this lady. She is writing." But I know the writing is very therapeutic, and you found it helpful. Is that not right?
Yeah, absolutely. I still write. I tell people I might not publish books anymore, but I'm an avid journaler. Writing for me is absolutely therapeutic. I still write now. I'm still in therapy now, still navigating all the things that I've had to go through from childhood to now. But I think what writing has always helped me do was release. Sometimes you don't always have the words to say what it is that you're feeling, but if you take a moment to just sit down and kind of put pen to paper, it kind of helps you get it out. And so I found that writing helps bring closure. Writing has helped me get to a place of acceptance. It's actually helped me to look at acceptance as really just accepting the reality of what is. I think we think acceptance is like this really magical place where all of a sudden, like, you're good. And it's just like you get to a place in your grief journey where you just can accept the reality of what is, and that is this person is not coming back, right? But I can still hold on to the memories. I can still hold on to the love.
Right.
Somebody once said that grief is like love with no place to go, right? Because that's what it
Mhm.
feels like. It's like you really don't have no place to go or where to give it, but you still hold on to that love. So writing for me helps me to keep the memories of my loved ones alive. Both my parents are gone now as well, and have to navigate just going through that. And I tell people now as an adult, I probably need mom and dad more than I did as a child. Like there's things I go through now that I'm like, dang, I can't even pick up the phone and call mom and dad about this one.
Mhm.
But I still get to hold on to the memories. I get to think back to like, well, what would mom tell me, or what would dad tell me? And even with Joseph, like I had what the, kind of what would Joseph do moments where it's like, what would he tell me to do in these moments? So yeah, but writing helped me get there. Just being able to put pen to paper and kind of get those emotions and those thoughts out. Because what I've learned even as a therapist, like your emotions stay locked in your body. So, what most people
Yeah.
don't realize is that when you're dealing with physical symptoms, 99% of the time is connected to your emotions. So, you have to figure out where in your body those emotions are, and you got to get it out. So, you have to allow your body to pass through those emotions. And it might look like, screaming and crying and, you know, breaking stuff and whatever you got to do, but you got to let the emotions pass through, because oftentimes your emotions and that trauma stays locked in and stored in your body.
Mhm. We did talked about, if you're dealing with a lot of anxiety, if you're dealing with stress in a way that you would not normally, if you're not getting sleep, you're not getting rest, you find yourself you're either overeating or not eating at all. Just affect so many things that affect you. Do you think that, and this is for anyone listening or either of you, do you think that we, well, no, I'm going to put it this way. Why do you think we don't turn to God sooner? Because usually with the shock of any kind of trauma or whatever, it's not an immediate thing most of the time that you turn to God and say, you may say, God, help me through this, but you don't turn to Him in a way that you do once the healing process has really begun. Am I am I making sense? You know what I'm saying? What do you all think about that? What do you think was why it is for that?
I think for me, it was I didn't know if he could handle it. So I think
Wow.
I didn't
Okay.
turn to him immediately, because at that time my walk with him wasn't as it is today. I tell people like that's my best friend. I could talk to him about any and everything, and I do. But at that time in my life, we weren't as close and tight as we are now. So for me, I just didn't know if he could handle it. And I remember being so angry, and I was visiting a church one time while I was living here in Maryland, and the pastor literally said to me from the pulpit, he was like, he knows you angry at him, so you might as well tell him. And I looked at him like, first of all, who you talking to, and mind your business. Second of all, like don't call me out, right? But he said it again. He said he knows you're angry at him, so you might as well tell him. And it was in that moment that I think what God wanted me to know was that I understand your human experience. I understand your human emotions. I've walked this earth, so I get it. And it gave me permission to finally tell him. And I remember leaving that church service and pulling over into a parking lot and just screaming and crying and saying, why? Like, why? Like, why would you do this to me? Like, why would you take the person that I love the most? Why? And I remember in that moment, his peace came over me and he said, one day, daughter, I will answer that question when you're ready for me to answer that question. And it was years later, like Joseph been gone 8 years come May, but it was years later when I finally got to that place of acceptance that he finally was able to answer that question for me in a way that brought so much more peace. Like I can tell people all the time, like I can't pinpoint the day and hour when all of a sudden I woke up and I was good. I just know I woke up one day and I was good. Like I can't be like, oh, it was on this day at this time. I
Yeah.
just know that once I was able to give myself the permission to be that vulnerable, to be that honest with God, to tell him how I was feeling, because I couldn't tell it to nobody else, because if nobody knew what that felt like, they were just going to give me, the church rhetoric. So I knew I could tell him. And once I had that moment of release, I was like, okay, God, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to hold your hand and you're going to help me get through this. And he did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about you, Francina? Why do you think it is?
For me, I was still processing it. So therefore, I mean, I'm trying to figure out and try to understand. So I'm gonna be honest with you. God was not even in the picture. Yeah, I mean, not that I was pushing him away, but I'm trying to understand and figure out, why, where this come from, why is this happening, and then once I got a grip of myself, because I knew that I couldn't handle it myself on my own. I knew that. And so then I went to God, and just asked for help, asked him
Mm-hmm.
to help me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and he did, but it was in his time and it was his way. Sometimes, you looking at it to come a certain way and it don't come that way. And you thinking that, well, where is you? Where are you, God? I'm sharing this with you and I'm not getting no response. I'm not hearing from you. Are you hearing me? Are you listening? And so, then you retreat, and shut down.
I think it seems like, Leah, you brought this up earlier. The stages of grief aren't in order.
Yes.
The shock may come before denial, and it just there are five, six things, but they come when they come. Except acceptance. It seems, and in listening, and in my own experience, the turn comes when you have surrendered, when you have let go of what God knows you need to let go of, when you come to that place of saying, like you were saying earlier, okay, it happened. I can't fix it. I can't change it. There's nothing I can do about it. That you finally get to that place of saying, help me through this. Help me figure this out. And whether he sends you to therapy or sends you to the altar, it's like you said, you can't pick the day. You don't remember the exact time or anything like that, but there was a moment where things turned and things changed. And it was that moment of surrender, that moment of saying, okay, somebody's got to help me through this. That things begin to turn, that you begin to heal, truly heal, heal in a way that you can define and go back to your passions and do the things that he created you to do with a renewed relationship with him. And I think that's important too. Leah, you have done some amazing things, but I want you to tell folks what you are doing right now. You've gone back into something that you had started and you kind of stepped away from, but tell us what you're doing right now.
Yeah, God has pivoted me 100% to focus on sexual violence work. So I have been back at that. I started doing sexual violence work a year after I was sexually assaulted in 2014. And then I kind of paused it after my dear friend Carmen passed away. And then probably in 2023, 2024, God was like, I need you to step right back into that realm because the people need you. So I've been doing that full steams ahead, and it has put me in a lot of incredible places. I get to travel. I get to do, a lot of speaking engagements, work with law enforcement, work with attorney generals. I'm actually having my very first charity event here in Maryland this fall. So yeah, I said, okay, God, back to your point of surrender. And I was like, if this is where you want me to show up, I'm gonna show up. Because as I tell people all the time, this path didn't I didn't choose it. God chose it. It chose me. Because if I had to pick any part of my life, I probably would not ever talk about my sexual assault. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
That and he does orchestrate it. We I'm not going to say we're almost out of time. We were out of time a while ago, but Francina, I, I want to say to you, because we kind of joked about it the other day, without the cancer journey, without the things that you went through, you would probably have been the last person that we would look at to be doing public speaking. But you've been on the Hill, you've been with the governor. I turned on the television one night and went, is that Francina? What the world? She's speaking with the governor, just, telling her story and sharing. And you have become quite an advocate for breast cancer awareness. We got 2 minutes for you. Talk about it.
Well, I love it because I love being able to educate, to be able to equip people with information in reference to self care, taking care of your bodies. Women 40 and up going to get them mammograms. And if you're under that, young adults to know how to do monthly self breast exams. It is very important. And right now, we got someone in office that's trying to get rid of Medicaid, which a lot of women need it in order to get their different screenings. So we got to stick together. We got to speak. We got to support one another. And when the petitions come out, we need to be proactive.
Yeah, yeah, go after it. Ladies, thank you so much. And thank all of you who joined us tonight. And this will be re aired on Saturday at noon. But until that time, it's always available on ALH Broadcasting. I thank you for being here. Francina, thank you so much. Leah, thank you so much. And I hope that those who are listening today and will listen in the future will know and understand that, yes, you can survive. And yes, you can thrive and still live with loss. So thank you guys so much for being here. Guess what? I'm going to be here next week, and you want to know what I'm going to talk about next week, and I'm not going to tell you. Come on back. I'm going to have two great guests, and I want you to come back and enjoy the program then. So until that time, I say again, thank you so much for being with me. And ladies, we'll have to do this again because I think we just touched the tip of the iceberg with this, but there is so much more. So thank you for being with me. And remember, when you come back, be ready to turn down the volume of life and be ready to receive so that when life speaks, you will speak life. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.